This is Note-Taking Guide 1.4, Multiplying Polynomials and Factoring Review, Math 3 class. So we're going to just start on this note-taking guide today by doing some multiplication. This is the distributive property. We're going to take the distributive property and we're going to distribute that 5x through to both parts of this equation or expression inside the parentheses. So 5x times 3x squared would be 15x cubed, and 5x times 1 would be 5x. So again, just the distributive property, taking that number out in front through to all three parts of the parentheses. So here we're doing it again. We have a negative x cubed times x squared, which would be a negative x to the fifth, a negative x cubed times x, which would be negative x to the fourth, and then a negative x cubed times a negative 4, which would be positive 4x cubed. We would always check to see if there's anything to combine, but because there's not right here, we're done. This next problem is a FOIL problem where we multiply. I like to call it the distributive property on steroids because we do the distributive property here and then we do the distributive property here also. So you do the x times the x to get x squared, x times 7 to get plus 7x, 2 times x to get plus 2x, and 2 times 7 to get plus 14. Now when we look to see if there's anything we can combine, we have like terms right there in the middle, so we're going to do x squared plus 9x plus 14 for our final answer there. Again, another distributive property is like the distributive property on steroids here. It's called the FOIL method, where we totally just take it through to everything. So we'll do x times x to get x squared, x times a negative 3 to get a negative 3x, 5 times x to get plus 5x, and 5 times negative 3 to get a negative 15. You have x squared plus 2x minus 15 when you combine those like terms in the middle. This next problem is still exactly what we were doing, the FOIL method, but just a different method to do it. So if you see the x squared plus 5, we took it and we wrote it down the side of the rectangle here. And then the 2x minus 3, it goes across the top. And then we just use the boxes to find the answer. So the x squared times 2x would be 2x cubed. The x squared times a negative 3 would be negative 3x squared. 2x times 5 would be 10x. And 5 times negative 3 is a negative 15. Just check your boxes to see if there's any like terms, and there's not. So we're going to write from highest power to lowest power, just rewriting those numbers inside our boxes that we got for our multiplication. This one is like crazy FOIL method or crazy distributive property because we're going to take this through to 3 things, and then we're going to take the 4 through to 3 things also. So it's going to be fairly long. I like to stack my answer here in just a minute. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So x times x squared is x cubed. X times 2x is plus 2x squared. X times a negative 5 is a negative 5x. 4 times x squared is 4x squared. I like to stack that under the x squared so I know I can combine them together. Then I'll have plus 8x and then minus 20. And again, I just kind of stacked them with like terms. I do that so I can add this straight down and just combine my like terms while I add. So I have x cubed. Right here I get 6x squareds. And then here I get plus 3x and minus 20. So in order to multiply, we also need to know how to do the opposite of that. The opposite of that would be called factoring. This is just a review of the zero product property up here. It just says if you have two things that are multiplied together like you have here and here, and their product is equal to 0, then at least one of them has to be equal to 0, but both of them could be. So we take them, we set them equal to 0, and we solve them for the solution. I'm going to show you what we're talking about here on this example. So this time we're factoring. We're trying to do like unfoil this is what we're doing. So we're going to take this x squared right here and we're going to split it up to x times x because that's how I would get my x squared. Then I'm going to look to see if I can find two numbers that will multiply to 24 and add to be 11. Because right here we have the 24, right here we have the 11. So numbers that will multiply to 24 and add to 11, I could list all my numbers out, but I know that 8 times 3 is 24 and 8 plus 3 is 11. So those are my factors that I'm going to put inside my factoring parentheses here. This up here at the top was equal to 0, so it still has to be equal to 0. Then I'm just going to do the zero product property rule. Because both of them multiplied together are equal to 0, at least one of them has to be 0. So I'm going to subtract the 8 from here, and I get x equals negative 8. Subtract the 3 on this side to get x equals negative 3. This is another factoring problem. Okay, so what we're looking for on this problem is two numbers that are going to multiply to negative 30 and add to be negative 13. Alright, so again we're looking for numbers that will multiply to negative 30 and add to be negative 13. So if we were to list our multiples, I'm thinking I'm going to have to use 15 times 2 to get to 30. To get the negative 13, that 15 is going to have to be negative. So it's going to be x minus 15 and x plus 2. Because this is set equal to 0, I'm going to just pull these out as the opposites, because if I were to take it and do x plus 5 equals 0, I would have to subtract that 5 over. So I'm going to get x equals negative 5 and x equals negative 2. So on these last two problems, and I'm just going to skip over to this one right here, before you can solve it you need to have it set equal to 0. So subtract the 4 over to the other side so it's set equal to 0. You'll have x squared minus 5x minus 14. And you're going to just have to find two numbers that are going to multiply to negative 14. And add to be negative 5. So the numbers that will multiply to a 14 would be 7 and 2. In order to get a negative 5, it would have to be minus 7 and plus 2. It's set equal to 0 still, so I'm going to pull those out as the opposites. So x equals 7 and x equals 2.